Okay, so let me go ahead and let's jump into this. Let me erase that. That was not supposed to be there. So let's go ahead and talk about what we already did this past lesson. If I said, what's the square root of 25? You're going to say, okay, well, what number times itself equals 25? So if I was to say, I said 5 times 5 equals 25, right? So the square root of all that, if I said the square root of 25 is actually going to be 5. All right. So the other area I wanted to make sure you understood is like, what if I said something squared equals 25? What would x equal? If I had to plug in what x equals, remember, x is just an unknown. I could make it y, I can make it g. We just want to know, what is x? Could x be 5? If I plugged in 5 for x, would that make sense? If I put this here, erase that, and put 5 here instead, would that be true? And it would be, okay? So those are the kind of concepts we were going into. So this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to preview what next week looks like. So if it's x plus 5, I know it's another 5, equals, we'll say 9. All right? Now, this is last semester, and this is very basic last semester. Remember what you were supposed to do? If you want to get x all alone, remember, you are supposed to go and get rid of this 5. This 5, this positive 5, does not need to be here. How do we get rid of it? We go and we subtract 5. And our final answer, this cancels out. This would be 4. So our final answer would be x equals 4. Okay, let's do a couple of these to remember what we're doing. What if I said x plus 3 equals 12? Go ahead and solve that one for me. Subtract both sides. Bring down the x equals 9. Okay. So what was the opposite operation? What did we do? We had a positive 3 here, and to get rid of it, we did the opposite of positive 3, right? That was the opposite. What if I had x minus 8 equals 10? Go ahead and try to solve this one. Instead of a negative 8, you would add 8, right? So then you would get x equals 18. Okay? So nothing here should surprise you on what we just did. What's going to be different now is there's going to be, well, let's just talk about this first. If I said x equals 16, this is done. Do we know what x is? Yes, we narrowed it down all the way down to x equals 16. Okay. But what if I said x squared equals 16? Is it completely simplified all the way down? Or do we still have to kind of think about this and try to get to a final answer where it's just x all alone? We can't have this exponent here. We got to figure out what we're going to do. And some of you may already know, just thinking about it, x squared equals 16. Something squared, that means something times itself equals 16. You would think 4 times 4 equals 16. So x squared, so x must be 4. And if we plug that in, 4 here, does that make sense? 4 times 4? And it sure does. But in algebra, which is what this is all algebra concepts. This is all freshman year concepts. If I said x squared equals 16, okay, that means now you have another step to solve the equation. The equation isn't completely solved. So there's one more step you have to do, and I'm going to show you what they do. And what they say is, basically you were able to do this in your head, but what if you weren't? What would you do? So to get rid of this. We want to kill this. We want to destroy this. It wants to go away. How do we destroy this exponent? So when all you're looking at is just x all alone, and that's what we want, right? We want x all alone. How do we do it? Okay, here we go. Come on, come back. There's a lot of scribbling I did there. All right, let's come back here. I went too far. So this is the way to do it. To the opposite of square is to now, watch how I'm going to do it. Square root it. Oh, this computer. All right, square root it. And the way I just did that right now crushes that square. But just like in an equation here, like what would we do with this equation? We would subtract 2 to both sides, right? That idea of both sides has to come into play. So both sides, we have to square root both sides. So we square root this side, we square root this side. Okay. Once we do that, this is gone now. This explodes, this is gone. The x just comes down all by itself. And then what's the square root of 16? 4. All right, I'm going to show it to you again. So don't freak out. Again, this is all stuff we're going to do on Monday and or Tuesday. X squared equals, we'll say, 49. How would you finish the problem? Square root both sides. If you square root both sides, x equals 7. And it gets all by itself. Okay? This is higher level stuff. I'm not going to lie. You got to make sure you know what you're doing, though. Okay? So x squared equals 100. What would you do? Square root both sides? X equals 10. Okay? Now, we're going to kick it up a notch. Pay attention. X squared plus 4 equals 40. Now, to solve this, you can do this. Don't freak out. You can totally do this. To solve this, though, you're going to use your old equation skills. What would you do first? Imagine right now, imagine this isn't even here. Okay? It is there, but imagine it's not. What would you do normally? If it wasn't there, what would you do? Would you subtract 4 to both sides? Okay. Then bring this down. X squared equals 40 minus 4, 36. Well, are we done? We're not completely done because remember, our whole goal is to get x all alone. X is not alone. There's this annoying little exponent above it. There's a little squared right here we got to get rid of, right? How do you do that? Didn't we just go over it? Don't you square root both sides? If you square root both sides, x squared equals 36, the square root of 36, boom. And that's your final answer from this equation. So what was your first step? Subtract 4, which is easy. We know how to do that. Got rid of all this. This is all gone. Then we deal with the 36. Let's do another couple of these. All right, what if I said x squared, let's just even make it, what if it was y squared plus 5 equals 30. I'm trying to make these as easy as I can. What's your first step? Let's get rid of this 5. Does that sound good? Let's get rid of that guy. Y squared equals 25. Now what are we going to do? Final step. Square root both sides. Y equals 5. All right, let's keep it going. Let's see if you can do these on your own now. All right, x squared plus 20 equals 84. Try this one out. Subtract 20. All right, then you're going to get x squared equals 64. From there, Okay. Let's see. Let me give you an interesting one. All right, go ahead and solve this one. All right, x squared equals 16. Oops, I chose the wrong marker there. But x is going to equal 4. All right, so this concept next week, we may go into more detail. And again, the whole idea, imagine this was your first part of your lesson. We're going to go into this. What's the step you're supposed to do? You're supposed to subtract 5 to both sides, and then you get x equals 5. Final answer. But it changes up when you have squared. You don't get a final answer until you kill this exponent. How do you do that? You got to make sure you square root both sides. So basically, you learned a new equation step today. Back in the day, you knew how to you guys remember this, like if it was like this, you would divide 2 to both sides, and that would be your step, right? So that's not too tough. If you had something like this, x over 5 equals 10, what would you do? You would multiply 5 to both sides to get rid of that. So now you just learned a new step. X squared equals 81. What are you supposed to do? You're going to square root both sides, and x equals 9. All right, Huskies, let's do the best we can with this next week. I hope this was helpful. I hope you understood what was going on a little bit here. Going over our square roots, everything is a building block to the next 2 weeks. What we're going to have going into, we're actually going to bring out some triangles, some right triangles, probably later on next week. And we're going to have to use all these skills to deal with them. All right, I will talk to you later.